Welcome, affiliated listeners, to another episode of the Affiliated Podcast. Today I'm joined by my co-host, the wonderful, the amazing, the surprisingly tall Thomas McMahon. How are you doing today, Thomas?
I'm great. Yes, much taller in person than I am on
Yes,
video.
much taller in person. The opposite is true for me. So, but we are really excited because we're going to be having a great conversation today, and I think a conversation that's really impactful to right now, because we see a lot of businesses oftentimes when maybe the front end starts, acquisition gets a little bit more challenging. There's more competition. There's economy, lots of different factors. Oftentimes people get really, really stressed, and where the focus should be is where's my LTV? Where am I making money in the back end? The strong parts and lifeblood of a business tend to live in the back end. And today we're actually, with our guest today, we're going to be talking about how a custom formulation in a supplement could directly correlate to some really outstanding LTV numbers. And to have that conversation with us today, we are joined by Elwin Robinson, good friend, amazing individual, super, super smart. How are you doing today, Elwin?
Thank you so much for that introduction. Thanks for having me.
Always good to have you. And I know it's a little bit later over across the pond that Elwin's joining us today with his great setup. So yeah, let's jump into it. So this conversation actually started with something where you had showed this recently to some clients that I'd connected to you with a question. And there were some really amazing stats. And I won't steal away from you, but just to let everyone understand kind of what we're talking about, why don't you share a little bit about some of the numbers that you were sharing with others that got people so impressive and kind of facilitated this conversation?
Yeah, it was basically looking at our best customers. So we have all categorized in a system called Entreport, and our top customers have spent almost $20,000 with us just in supplements in the last few years. There's a few who spent over $15,000, but the interesting thing is once you get below $15,000, like the first page is like 15, 14, 13, 13, 13, 13, 14. But then like the rest of the page is all, up to 12. And then the next page is 12, 12, 12, 12, 11, 11, 11, 11, 11. And basically there's like hundreds of customers who spend over $10,000. And I didn't really realize how unusual that is in our industry. Now, we also sold ebooks, but that's very, very little of it. So I'm just adding, that's maybe, 2%.
I mean, are these like a Walgreens reselling your supplements? Like, or are these just very expensive supplements? Yeah.
It's interesting. The customers is not who you'd think without giving away any anonymity. I mean, the biggest one is actually a medical doctor in California. One of the biggest was a head of a private security company in a West African nation. I mean, it's a real interesting ragtag group of people. But yeah, and what I didn't realize about that is how unusual it was, certainly in our industry and probably in the supplement industry in general, but certainly in our industry. And so that prompted a whole conversation about how do you get those loyal customers who literally buy everything that you put out, who love you, who recommend you, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Now, just to step back a little bit, I think a couple of things just to help frame why these numbers are so impactful. And then we'll talk about the impact and how that could change your business. But super amazing to have just pages, hundreds of customers that have generated, over $10,000 in sales is huge, and obviously huge impact. But it wasn't like you guys are some sort of standard e-com store that has this huge e-com experience with PPC, things like that. Really the basis of this is what a lot of companies are probably familiar with long form sales pages, a lot of affiliate marketing, and really that's how the majority of the business grew. So just to establish that, and we're talking about a men's health supplement as well, or a range of men's health supplements. I know there's more than one there, but one of the big keys here is that it's not a off the rack kind of product. This is a custom formulation that really, really produces great results for the consumers, so much so that even at a higher price point, they're coming back time and time again. So Elwin, talk a little bit about how that's changed, your business and really impacted you personally in terms of the decisions you've been able to make with the business and just in general, how you operate when you have that type of, bottom line revenue coming in.
Yeah, so just to explain, there's not many products. Obviously, I do own a different business with thousands of products in an e-commerce store, and then it does make sense that people would spend that much eventually. But no, we are talking about about 7 or 8 products in total, of which 3 or 4 account for most of the sales. So yeah, it's the same products over and over again. And yeah, why do people buy them? Because they work for them, right? So how does that impact our business? Well, it means that the LTV is high, which means that you can afford to spend more to acquire a customer than anyone else. It also means that even though we have not been, I would never take advice from me about how to be as successful as possible in the front end at acquiring customers, right? There are people who are way, way more successful who've been on this podcast who can share about that. The thing that I feel like we really got a grip on more than almost anyone else in our industry, though, is how to maximize the value of those customers once you've acquired them. So even though we weren't very good at front end acquisition, even though we never got a blockbuster hit and had $1 million sales a month and millions of dollars a month and all that kind of stuff, we still managed to build a real business. And I think that's one of the distinctions as well, which is, to me, like, a real business is something that lasts for years and years, that has equity, that grows, that accrues value over time, and that can be relied upon, right? So meaning, if with our business, if you took away our front end new customer acquisition strategies, we would be very, very upset, but the business would still exist. Right? We still have our existing customers who keep coming back to us month after month. We have people on subscription who come back month after month. So it gives a certain amount of confidence or comfort, I guess, to know that you're not entirely at the whims of affiliates, even though affiliates are great. And yes, the vast majority of our traffic, as in 95% plus, has come from affiliates. So it's totally a ClickBank business and come from ClickBank affiliates. So it totally is one of those businesses. But yeah, it's been very good to be able to build a real business on top of that. And I am surprised how few people do it. And I feel like the real wasted opportunity when I see people who are doing really well at front end acquisition, way better than us. They've cracked something that we haven't achieved, and yet they're making razor thin profit margins. They have this huge spike in sales, and then it dips, and maybe at some point they're actually making even minus amount because now all the refunds are coming in from the sales before. Like, when you have that kind of situation, I mean, I guess it's if that's what you're into, then great. But to me, I much prefer the consistent month and year, and that business that I talked about that has hundreds of customers who spend over $10,000, thousands of customers who spend over $5,000. With that business, it's really nice that it is a business that's been around 8 years and will continue to be around as long as we run it.
Well, I think that's huge, right? The fact that you have 8 years and it hasn't had to be a brand new product. It isn't a brand new brand. You're not starting and rebuilding over and over and over again, where that could be great. When you hit a great acquisition hit, we all know that, that's hard. It's hard to hit after hit in the acquisition game. But when you really unlock that back end and have that LTV, it just smooths it out. You could really create profit and generate, like you said, real business and real profit for such a longer period of time, which I think oftentimes just allows you to make better decisions in your business, at least different ones. You're coming from a different point of leverage than you otherwise could. So definitely really impactful. Thomas, any thoughts on just kind of that strategy, or just at least the impact of what that type of LTV could do to the business?
Well, I was curious, like, when you're talking about these customers with the 4 or 5 figure LTV numbers there, like, what type of average order value or product price are they coming in on? Is it like I guess what would be like your initial checkout kind of value, if you will, for those kinds of customers?
Yeah, those are not average LTV values. Those are like the top customers, just to clarify. Right. It's just that from what I heard with many businesses, they haven't got any people who spend that much. But yeah, our average order value coming in, I don't think is different from any other, mid to top offer, Thomas. I think it's, depending on the product, maybe $150 to $200, something like that. It really is all coming from the back end, not that we're super amazing at getting that high average order value to begin with.
Okay, cool. Thank you. No, yeah, I think some people might assume you might be doing high ticket phone sales or something, helping drive up some of those, numbers on the back end initially or something like that. But the fact that they're, doing coming in on a low ticket, average ticket, if you will, and then just sticking with you for that long and just rebuying is probably a testament to that product quality. I was curious, is there like a general main pain point they're kind of solving with these supplements that they're typically buying for the ones that are doing the 4 and 5 figure LTVs?
Yeah, these are men's supplements. So this is, low testosterone, all that kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Men's vitality, men's virility, whatever we want to call it. And of course, that is an
Sure.
industry that is rife with even lower trust and even lower quality than the average dietary supplement industry, unfortunately, is. So, on one hand, you could say, oh, well, that's a highly motivated market, maybe it's easier for you, but on the other hand, it's a very, very low trust market, and a low traffic availability market that's made it much more difficult. So I
Hmm.
guess it's some pros, some cons.
Well, and I even argue highly competitive, right? Like that is a space that, especially recently,
Yes.
over the past couple of years, has had very large, I would say, more clinical or corporate influences as well, with your hymns and things like that have gone to the market. So definitely, definitely tough, but I think a testament to what could really be done when you think about that. So let's actually, I think that transitions really nicely into great. Those are great LTV numbers, but as Thomas said, like what really makes that happen? If you're acquiring similarly to what most people are in the supplement industry right now, possibly even less than they are. What are you doing that's so different outside the fact that this is custom formulation? I want you to address that as well, and we could talk about that more specifics. But in general, is it just a custom formulation? Is there anything else that you need to have in place to really, I'm not going to say guarantee, but hope that you could start maybe achieving higher LTV numbers with the customers that you do get?
Yes, having helped a few, successful ClickBank brands with this now, I can say that there's four things that are usually missing that I identified that we do, which can really transform things. Um, so the first one is real high quality customer service, including phone support. I'm doing kind of maybe the least important one first, but it still is very important. When I say real, I mean that the person who is doing the answering of the phone or the answering the emails has had a thorough briefing about what your business is and understands it. And when a customer contacts them, they actually understand the question and they understand not just your sales processes, but also, what your customer avatar is, what their goals are, what their frustrations are, why they're coming to you in the first place. Um, and then having that phone support makes a really big deal. We don't spend that much to provide it. We use a company called HelpGrid, who I'm happy to give a shout out to if that's allowed.
Mhm.
They're really awesome. We've been using them for many years now. They answer the phone 20 hours a day, 363 days a year. And the cost of having that service is very small. In fact, we go through it with them every month, and every month they charge us less than they manage to recoup for us in lost card declines and lost subscriptions. So they're always a net positive ROI just based on those two factors alone. Plus, I think, and this is harder for me to prove, but I think the fact that you always have someone available on the phone says a lot about your trustworthiness and reliability as a business. Also, do not have a no reply email address that you email from. This just signals utter contempt to the customer. The only people who should be doing that are customers who have a monopoly on a particular industry because of government interference and who can get away with it. If you're not that, then it is absolutely foolish to have a no reply address. So talk to your customers or have someone else who talks to your customers who knows what they're doing. Check in with them regularly. I would say give that ability to answer the phone. That's a huge, first step.
No, no. And first, a great shout out to Jeannie and the Help Grid team. They do a fantastic job over there for sure. But I think you're very right with phone sales. The credibility of a voice on the other end, and especially a very distrusting environment of digital sales. Like there's so, especially we could argue supplements as well. There's been an increase in competition with a decrease in trust. phone sales really help, not even phone sales, but phone support really bridges that gap of creating some human to human trust. And honestly, when you have great services that could do it at a good price, like, you'd be silly not to. I also like the good add on the do not reply email. There is nothing like a middle finger of take this and you don't get a respond in any way, shape, or form that doesn't say I'd like to stay with this company. So that's a good point. Anything to add to that, Thomas?
I'm curious, like what are you doing on the email side after? Can they go through maybe the phone ascension and the initial phone support, or just for the general customer? Like, is there a chance to rebuy, or doing different things on the resale for email? Like, how does that kind of flow work for y'all?
That's a good question. That brings me to number 2, intelligent follow-up.
Hey, look at that.
What a great transition. Look, it's almost like we practiced, even though we didn't.
So we do certain sequences, campaigns, automations, whatever you call them, as standard. So we always have a card decline campaign. That is both an email campaign, and then we have a trigger to go to HelpGrid to follow up with them by phone if the email is not enough. We do a abandoned cart campaign. I'm sure everyone's familiar with what one of those are. We do a but then we do a customer campaign, and we do an ingratiation campaign. So the ingratiation campaign goes to first-time customers who've never bought anything of ours before. And so this is just talking about us and our company and our mission and offering to help and stuff like that. That we don't do that, as I said, anytime other than the very first time someone buys. This is something that I learned, many years ago from a marketer. It's basically just showing again that you care, positioning yourself. Often there'll be an email in there like asking a question, like what are the top 3 things that you'd like help with, or something like that, to try and get that engagement, that back and forth, and also to actually obviously understand the customer. Now, every time, so that's the first time someone buys anything. The first time someone buys a new specific product with us, we also send out what we call our education campaign. What does this mean? Well, this kind of relates a little bit to point 3, but this is where whatever their issue is that has got them coming in looking for help, we're giving them probably several emails linking to several blog posts, ideally, although it can just be an email if you don't want to publish a blog post or an article. And it's basically just saying, here's all the other stuff that's going to help with your issue, right? So if I pick something less contentious, like weight loss, right? So if we're selling a weight loss supplement, then the first email might be, here's all the exercise strategies that I recommend for weight loss, right? Don't overdo it with cardio, but make sure you do 3 days a week. And here's how you do it without injuring yourself, all of that kind of stuff, right? And then the second email might be dietary, right? Here's how I recommend eating. Here's, how often you should eat. Here's how much protein you should have. Here's how many carbs you should have, whatever, right? All of that kind of stuff. And then the third email might be, a bunch of recipes. So just as an example, that is showing the person that you actually care about them getting the result. I would not advertise this as a bonus beforehand because, as we know in marketing, like people just want a quick fix. They just want to take a magic pill. They don't want to know that they're going to get all this education after they buy because they want to think that it's easy.
No, I'm going to learn something. No, thanks.
However, we do this. We have done this originally just because we feel it's the ethical thing to do. That if you're offering to help people, then you need to provide them with all the information. If they then choose not to do it, then of course that's up to them. It also positions you as an expert and authority, which we'll talk about. That's my point 3. And it also, and those emails get great open rates and great click-through rates because you're not selling anything. So what does that do? It tells the ESPs that the person's actually interested in receiving your emails, right? So we really like to do that as well. Another sequence that we always do is an upsell.
I want to stop real fast, Elwin. I'm gonna stop you on that one, just because I want some really good points. I think one thing they're really going to say that not only is not selling, not only are you giving the information and kind of great point on the ethical side. I think one thing that is kind of lost, and I think it's really important why you don't sell this on the front end page. Not only do people maybe not care, But when you show it as a benefit, or you're just giving the information freely, you're becoming a source of truth in their life. And that's incredibly impactful. The more we could become certain points of truth to the buyers, the more likely they are to come back and buy. It's not only a trust thing, but now you become a source of information and truth. And like I said, I know I talk a lot about cults, not as much as I have recently as I have in the past, but if you look at cults and religions, one of the biggest things they do is they become as many sources of truth, of information, as they can. And the most dedicated followers are the ones that are consuming only the truth from one single entity, which makes them very valuable from an LTV standpoint, and you very good as a cult leader. But we're not doing that here. We're just selling supplements. And the more that you create that valuable content that creates that truth, the more likely they are to come back. I just thought that was a really good point. So anyway, go back to the other campaign.
Yeah, thank you. 100% agree. So we also do an upsell non-buyer campaign always. So this is again what I mean by intelligent follow-up. So you do have to tie your ClickBank account to the email account to be able to do that accurately. And we use Ontraport for that, and there's a nice ClickBank integration there. And so basically, a few hours after they haven't decided to take that upsell, and then the next day, maybe a couple of days later, something like that, maybe 2 or 3 times, depending, we will recommend the upsell again. Now, if the only upsell is more of the same, we may do that, but we prefer to do that with different complementary products that are in the upsell flow. So, if it's
how are you timing that? Like if I bought something, didn't take your upsells, are you waiting for the numbers to receive that first product before they start getting those emails? Are they getting those right away? Like what's that timing for those upsell sequence emails?
So I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it's 2, 3, 4 hours for the first one, like 24 hours, and then maybe another 3 to 7 days. I think we've tried different versions, but the idea being pretty immediate, right? When it's still fresh in their mind. Next day, try again. And then the third one will be hopefully, as you say, after they actually receive it. But as I say, we usually do it more with the products that are not more of the same. And so the fact that they haven't received the first product yet is kind of therefore not so relevant about pitching the upsell.
That makes sense.
Do you guys lead with discount for that first short time frame one? Or are you assuming that they maybe abandoned or didn't even see the complimentary offer, so you're just trying to get a second view at it?
It's a good question. So, you talked about being a source of truth in the person's life, which I really like. I think you want to be a source of integrity in the person's life. And so when I see, for instance, people refusing an offer, and then a little pop-up comes up and goes, oh, well, you can have it for cheaper then. To me, that instantly, it may work because the person's like, oh, I was, on the fence now. If you're now going to offer it to me for less, then I'll take it. But the thing is, that person is then never going to trust you again, from my perspective, because they're always going to know that, what you say is not your final word on things. So we do not offer it for cheaper later for that reason than we offered it originally, because we don't want to be playing those kind of games. We will offer it the same price, like I'm not sure if you're asking about if we'd sell it for more, but yeah, we offer it for the same price as when they didn't take it as an upsell. And we might put some scarcity on it, right? Because it really will be the last chance, like with the final email. Okay, last time I'm going to offer it to you at this price. So that's, genuine, and then we'll do that.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great mention that, again, we're wanting to build trust and truth in these conversations. So I think it's important to know that, that's a piece of it, where it might be easy to go hit up discounts and deals. What's that long-term cost? And so, yeah, I'm not just curious to see what your method was on that. Perfect.
And of course,
Any
there's
other
nothing wrong with a
campaigns or
discount.
strategies you want to highlight here? Yeah. But where and when you're doing it, right? You just 3 to 4 hours earlier, they just saw it. Now it's even cheaper. In that language, you probably put never before seen before, and you're never going to get this again. In fact, you'll get better price. Here's cheaper. Yeah, you devalue the product over and over again.
Yeah, I think that's the other part. It's not only signaling you have no integrity, it's also signaling you don't value your own product. So yeah, absolutely agree. The only other thing I'd add for this automation point is, then after we do that, we'll put them in a sequence to recommend all our other products first. Now, of course, if the person watching this doesn't have any other products, then, fair enough. But even if you have 2 upsell products, right, you can still put them through a sequence for that. And so we'll go between, and basically, because as I said, we got 7 or 8 products now. So basically, we will keep offering each of our other products alternately until they buy it, and then we remove that one, and then we just recommend all the other products that we haven't bought that they haven't bought yet, and then we'll remove that one, and then they'll only get emails about products that they haven't already bought. The reason why I feel this is so important, because again, it shows that you're paying attention, that you care. One of the other things that annoys me so much, other than receiving no reply email addresses, is when you buy something and then they relentlessly send you emails telling you that you need to buy it. And it's like, why are you doing this? And it just makes you, if you don't unsubscribe, you shut off, like, emotionally, right? You're like, you don't care about me. You have no idea what's going on in me. I don't trust you. I don't want to hear from you, right? And certainly I'm not going to buy.
How do you approach that with like rebuys when, like, if they bought 3 bottles and their 90 days is up for whatever product they might have bought? Like,
that's the last one I was going to say. The last one.
We're just reviving.
You're just setting up. It's perfect. Simpatico here. You just need Thomas to follow you around here, Elwin, for all your perfect conversations.
So the last one I was going to say that we have automated is a reorder campaign. And so that's based on around, 27 days, something like that, because we're assuming a bit of shipping time. We want them to order a little bit before. If it's a 30-day product, around 85 days. If it's a 90-day product, something like that, there'll be a reorder campaign. The reorder campaign will be, first of all, asking them how they enjoy the product with a survey or a review thing or something like that. And then, oh, by the way, and we'll offer the usual discount. Second one will be, did you not like the product? We'll actually invite criticism, and let us know if there's any problem. Let us know if it didn't work for you, right? And also listing some of the reasons. Maybe it didn't work because you're on let's use weight loss as an easy example again. Maybe it didn't work because you're gorging on donuts and pizza or whatever, right? Like, obvious examples. Maybe it didn't work because you didn't do any kind of exercise. So we'll, could it be this? Could it be that? Right? And then the third one will be reminding them all the benefits.
For that second email, that did you not like it thing, I'm really curious about that one. Like, are you actually prompting responses to that email, or like, what are you trying to do with that? Are you trying to get them?
Yeah, we ask for them. We say, did it not work for you? Here's a bunch of reasons why it might not have worked for you. Please tell us if it didn't work for you. And then, by the way, it's available right now at a discount if you feel like we've resolved your concern already with our, reasons why it might not work.
I understand you might not have this in front of you. Like, are the open rates on that email decent? Like, is that like I feel like that's like a bit of a disruptive email that I wouldn't really expect to see from a brand.
The open rates are better than the other ones. Yeah. Like in that sequence. Yep.
Yeah. I love that email. I feel like it would help reduce refunds, or at least help catch things like that, because they actually have a outlet again, right? They're obviously, they have the phone support from you, but now you have, hey, what's going on? It's almost like this, like, it's not like a guilt thing a little bit. It's like, ooh, like, yeah, maybe I should respond to this. Like, I actually do care. Yeah.
Well, I think it's definitely a welcome mat of feedback, which really, it reduces a lot of friction that you might have going into that type of situation. I think the key thing there isn't just inviting the feedback, it's giving examples. That's, I think, actually where it really
shows a lot of awareness. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think there's enough people know that from a sales tactic, if someone says no, or they don't want to rebuy, anything you say about why is going to be used against you, right? Like, it's like your Miranda rights. You're like, I better not say anything. But when they're like, hey, could have been this and this and this, it sounds like high self-awareness, not high pressure, which makes people feel a lot more comfortable to share, because if like, oh, they're admitting there's things that could be wrong. You just want to engage in that response. So I think not only the fact that it's different to ask, hey, what do you not like about it? Why would you not buy? But also giving the recommendations of what could have gone wrong really, really transforms that. Now, just to bring it back to you, Elwin, on that point, because I know we still have two other things to cover here, so we probably should speed along, or else we're gonna have a Joe Rogan style podcast.
Yeah.
But do you find, if someone said, "Well, hey, why would you want to invite or give them examples?" What's kind of your response to that? Because I imagine a lot of people might feel like that's a bit risky to give the reasons why they shouldn't buy in an email.
Well, first of all, you're not doing it before they buy. You're doing it after they've had a chance to use it for a while, right? So
Yep.
if they have not had the negative outcome, then they're not going to look at the email, or it's not going to affect them negatively. But if they have, it shows that you care. It shows that you understand. And, we'll try and also recommend, solutions. I'm struggling to think of a hypothetical right now. But it can be a case of, were you having it with food that stops it being absorbed? Try having it without food, like various things like that, right? That
Mm-hmm.
you're actually suggesting things that could potentially help. So
Perfect. Cool. That's awesome. All right. Well, now we covered a lot of sequence stuff, and I should just serve it up to Thomas because he'll probably do a perfect transition question. But let's just jump into kind of the third thing. You already kind of talking about this in terms of credibility. So why don't you tell us what the third thing you think is really key for driving that high LTV in the back end?
So I think the kind of business in ClickBank, this is the one they're least going to want to hear, but I do think it's important. And that's having a real brand based on a real person. Does it have to be based on a real person? Can it be an abstract brand? Yes, it can be, but it's so much better if it is with a real person. Now, having said that, our industry, because it's this kind of adult material stuff, our spokesperson, which is not me for that business, he uses a pen name, but it's his real image, and most importantly, everything he says is real, right? So he's not imagining that he's a character and then speaking. Everything he's talking about is his own experience, his own stories, his own life, his own opinions, whatever. And to me, there's something really, and I know that people would prefer to just hire a spokesperson, or these days, create an artificial one using AI and stuff like that. And even before AI, still creating an artificial one. But I feel like there's something about it being real, which is crucially important. And so even if, you don't want your name or your face out there, I think you could use a pen name. You could even use a not real image. But I think that the messaging should come from a particular person who has a real interest in the area, like whatever it may be. So let's say if it's weight loss, it's someone who actually cares about weight loss, right? And why I feel like most of the, like, if you look at the world of fiction, most of like the best stories throughout history, we were talking about the Odyssey or the Iliad or stuff like that, or the Bible or whatever, the best-selling book of all time, or if we're talking about more recent things like TV shows, maybe Sopranos is considered the best of all time. They're very often based on reality, and a lot of so even something like Sopranos is an example. I think Silicon Valley is an example. The reason why it's so good and it's so relatable is because most of the stories in there are actually real. They're just picking, like the series is maybe not realistic because there's so many different things happening to these people in one timeline, but every story did actually happen to someone, and probably similar for a lot of those ancient stories, right? The Bible and whatever it might be. Like, we don't know how exactly accurate it is to history, but it's the fact that it's based on history, I feel like gives it a really, really strong impact. So yeah, I just feel like authenticity is always better than a fake persona or even AI generated persona. People can tell, and I wish this weren't the case. I've worked with a lot of people, and I see when they use like a fake persona, it never feels real and it never works well. I mean, maybe there is examples that I don't know about, but all the now, having said that, I know there are businesses that just hire a front person. That person is just a front person, and that's great. But I'm saying, if all the messaging comes from someone who really doesn't care about the person's cares about their frustrations, about their goals, then I feel like you will not get that long-term LTV. People won't keep coming back. They won't trust you in the same way.
No, I think that really vets out, and I could even further example. If you look at things that aren't necessarily always framed on history, if you look at like abstract, like science fiction, right, or real events, in fantasy, the most powerful stories there are still based on real human emotion, and we take abstract situations to create real human experiences. So I think when you go back to that level of authenticity and content, and over the long term, because we're not talking about, could you fake a short-term impression? Of course you can, right? You can put a good front man, you get some good content writers, and maybe that first interaction is enough. But over time, that stuff kind of, erodes away, and you're left with whatever is left there with you. And if you don't have that real passion and the real content consistently over time, I agree with you. It seems to, the lack of authenticity and realness kind of goes away over time. You're not going to get people coming back because you can't be a source of truth if there's nothing really truthful underneath it, at least not forever. So,
And,
or unless you're a
and
sociopath. But hopefully we have less of those and more of real people that just do the right thing, or at least speak some truth. So, anything to add to that, Thomas? What do you think about that?
I don't have a lot to add to it. I think you've covered it pretty well. Like you see
can I?
examples, especially in like the dating niche, right, where things are similar to yours, but not a little different. But it's offers with like real people, even if they are pen names, that seem to do well, and content based around those. No, I've got a bunch of questions around like the data of everything. I don't want to like steer this conversation another way, but
no, that's good. That's a great transition. But yeah, what are you going to say, Elwin?
Yeah, I just want to add one more point, which is the other thing is, and to me, this is such a wasted resource. So people will send tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of visits to a sales page, whether it would be a video or a long form sales page, and they'll have this personality there, right? Usually it'll be some kind of name, some kind of face. And then what happens when that person watching or reading that Googles that person, right? Usually in the ClickBank world, nothing, right? What happens if they look them up on Facebook? What happens if they look them up on YouTube? Nothing. The person doesn't exist. And then the person who's just done that Google search is going to go, oh, this is a scam. Well, it's not necessarily a scam, right? It might be a great product. You might be doing everything else. But just the fact that there's no paper trail, like this person doesn't seem to exist, because we live in that social media age where if you don't have a bunch of different profiles, who the hell are you, right? Like normal people who do normal jobs have like a massive digital footprint whereby you can know everything about their lives. How is it that you, famous doctor, famous expert, famous whatever, when I look you up, I can find nothing about you, right? So it just doesn't ring as true. And I also think it's a massively wasted opportunity. So if you bring in a real expert, if you are not the expert, or if you are the expert yourself, then you actually have a mutually beneficial situation going on there, which is all the people who you're sending traffic to your sales material, they look up that person and it drives traffic to their social channel. And then on the other side, the person who has the social channels or whatever, they can drive traffic to your offer. So it's a mutually beneficial situation when you have that. And it just seems to me to be such a shame. And I realize if you're making millions of dollars and you're happy and you don't think about this stuff. But to me, I'm always like trying to optimize. And it just seems like a shame that out of the 98.5% of people who don't buy, right, that a certain percentage will have probably looked you up and then seen that you don't exist. And you could have made those people a Facebook follower or a YouTube subscriber or a TikTok follower, or, even better, they go to your website because you rank highly and then they opt into your page and now they're in your system that way. So if that's the other aspect of it from a monetary point of view, that just seems such a waste to me.
Yeah, it's a huge opportunity. Affiliates and the acquisition that they provide, it's actually a great way to build an audience on a social platform if you have that, when you have a real person behind it. And we have lots of examples of that. Whether it's like Thomas Lauer grew his influence even more through direct response after he got paired with products. Danette May was an example of somebody that really elevated their social presence through direct response and an offer. So lots of times. But that being said, Owen, if you just want to get around it, all you have to say is Big Pharma. Big Pharma took all my socials down. They're just keeping me down from everything. Just kidding, guys. That's not compliant. Don't say that. So, but now, so that's a great transition. Thomas, you said some numbers. So you had some number oriented questions. Let's jump into a couple numbers, and then we'll actually go into, I think, the key thing that we led with, which is the custom formulation and how to do that right, and why that's impactful also. So first, let's jump into some numbers.
Well, yeah, we had Tyler Ryan on from LTV Numbers recently, right? He went all into, kind of how he's tracking LTV numbers and how he does all this. Finding accurate LTV is so important. I was curious how you back into LTV on your side and how you like to kind of approach the actual data crunching there and how that feeds into the front end of it. I know how it works in theory, but just real specific on like how you're actually compiling those numbers.
We're not on top of it as we should be. And part of the problem is that we use ClickBank, but ClickBank isn't our only source. So it is all aggravated in Entreport. We also, these days have a Shopify store that doesn't do very much, but it does volume without paying an affiliate commission. So in terms of profitability, it's good. But then we have Entreport. We have sales coming in directly through Entreport. We have sales going in directly through ClickBank. The reason why that matters is because all the Shopify and Entreport sales numbers are total revenue, but all the ClickBank money coming in is only revenue after various degrees of affiliate commissions, and commissions have been paid. So unfortunately, seeing it completely accurately is very difficult for that reason, because we never actually know the total revenue that's coming in from ClickBank. But I can tell you, years ago, we stopped counting kind of when it was over $500 LTV. So it's not, amazing, but it's good enough. Given most people, as we say, don't get much in sales before, beyond the first order, I think it's, certainly a lot higher. The thing is, obviously the LTV doesn't have to be that much higher to triple your product profit, for instance, right? So if you've got like $150 cost for, average cost per order between the affiliate commissions and the product and the shipping and the fulfillment and whatever else, other variable costs like that you may have, then if you make $200, then that's a $50 product. If you make $250, that's a $100 product. So you just doubled it by only increasing your LTV a little bit. So, but yeah, $500 is what it was a few years ago. And the other thing is, of course, again, we don't know how to calculate correctly. And I could probably watch that episode, because all the new people are coming in. They're always included in the total, but we don't know what they're going to buy over their lifetime yet. So that always reduces it from what probably the true figure is. So I'm actually not as on top of it as I should be. That's why I use the how much the top customers have spent metric instead.
That makes sense. Yeah. No,
we might know a guy
get you connected to Tyler.
Help.
Yeah, because he solves for all that data aggregation piece and like tying it all back together and back to attribution and all that. And
that sounds awesome.
Turns out to figure out LTV, all you need is a NASA scientist. That's all you need, just one of them.
So easy. Yeah.
Simple. So, that's fantastic.
If you're just using one sales channel, it's not too bad. Like in Shopify, I can see it quite easily. But once you use multiple sales channels, including,
which normally happens pretty fast too. So it doesn't take long before you have more than one. So let's go on to the custom formulation side. So that being the fourth pillar to really boosting up that LTV. And I imagine a pretty important one too. So talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's really the most important one, right? We've left the best till last. Because if your product doesn't help the person, at least to some degree or in some way, then they're not going to keep buying it. They're more likely to refund. They're more likely to charge back. They're also more likely to tell other people that your product sucks, leave a negative review, all of that kind of stuff, right? So there's two factors involved with this. First of all is how well your product worked. And second factor is how inflated the claims that you've made are, right? Meaning, if your product is good for a person, for instance, but does not have noticeable benefits, which is true of a lot of, just plain vitamin supplements, for instance, that's totally fine. And people will carry on buying it for years in many cases. as long as you don't tell them that they're suddenly going to feel on top of the world if they have it, right? So you have to be, honest and realistic with the claims that you make. But better, obviously, in our world, in our direct response market, is to not rely on the faith of the customer that it must be doing something, and to actually find areas where you can formulate products that actually do make a noticeable difference in a significant percentage of people, at least. But of course, it's impossible to formulate a product that will help everyone in the vast majority of cases. Even most pharmaceuticals, right, don't claim to do that. There's always potentially reasons, and so certainly with a nutraceutical there's reasons, but you want it to help the vast majority of people. That's what you're actually looking for,
because this is really looking on. I think it's important to know that you're wanting to extract the max out of a hyperactive buyer, right? Someone that is going to work for it, it's going to make a difference, they're going to come back time and time again. That's the goal, right?
Absolutely, 100%. And
Yeah.
they'll buy your other products, right? Especially if
Mhm.
you've got other products that are about different but related issues that they probably suffer from as well. Then and that's where I recommend, we kind of skipped over this a little bit, but like integrated product suite is the way I've heard it described, right? A bunch of complementary offers, because
Mhm.
what we do is whatever initial offer they come in on, we'll then offer them everything else that we do, basically, and we'll do that with each of them. So if all the products you do are in an integrated suite like that, if there's weight optimization, heart optimization, blood sugar optimization, like often those will all come together. Someone who needs one will often need the other two as well. And
Yeah.
so doing it that way, because here's the crazy thing, I think that most people buy these things not expecting them to work, right? They're almost buying them like a lottery ticket. Like, I don't think it's going to work. I've been lied to too many times. But on the other hand, I really want to get this outcome, and and I'm feeling optimistic, I'm feeling hopeful, so I'll just try it, right? And so if your product does anything good for them, and I think that's where you have to make sure that you formulate a product that will at least always do something good for them, even if it doesn't necessarily resolve everything, then they're actually going to be amazed.
Mhm.
I remember, I did surveys a long time ago in a different business about the product, and it was like, how pleased are you, between 1 and 5, for instance, extremely pleased, very pleased, quite pleased, whatever. And then there was also, how bigger results have you got? Huge results, big results, medium results, small results, no results, something like that. And in terms of what results they got, like the average score was like medium to small results. And then the average level of satisfaction was huge to big. So that, and this was hundreds of survey respondents on, I think, quite a, expensive set of products. So they probably had high hopes for it. And so it was interesting to me that they didn't, obviously, like the results I was a bit disappointed with that. I wished at the time that the results they got were actually higher, but I was very interested to see that it didn't take much for them to be delighted, and like 95% of them said they told friends that they should try it too, and all this other stuff. So I think having, realistic, but your ambition should be to create a product that the customer will definitely noticeably benefit from. I guess that's the point. And then they will be amazed and they will be delighted.
Yeah. And they'll always know that it's working and want to keep buying it again and again because they also know when it's not there. So that being said, I think that sounds amazing. A lot of people are like, great. Can't white label do that? Or why do I have to go custom formulation? Or more importantly, how the hell do I custom formulate a supplement or find a white label that's going to do that? Because I myself might not be a passionate person when it comes to supplement formulation and the different types of nutrients and vitamins that you could have. So kind of walk us through what does it take to formulate the right supplement to make it actually work or at least feel like it's doing something?
I'm not against using white label. I think some of the white label formulas are actually pretty good and can really help people. And I think obviously it's a really good way of starting a business and testing stuff and all the rest of it. But yeah, I feel like if you want that long-term value, once you've proven once you've proven that, you know, the front end acquisition can work with a white label product, you then want to go to a custom one. Well, I can answer how I do it compared to how most people do it who are formulators. I'll start with that because that's very easy to describe. At best, what they'll do is they'll look for a bunch of ingredients that have some degree of scientific validity for that outcome. And then they'll put a list of that together, and then they'll say it's got to be under this price. And then they'll formulate it based on that. The problem with that is that, first of all, they don't really understand the issue, which I'll talk about in a second when I talk about how I do it. And then second of all, because they don't, they often end up using the wrong amounts of different things. So a formula that could have worked with the right level of those ingredients ends up not actually being any good. But I'll explain that
like
better.
Cost, they have to lower it down, and that might be an expensive ingredient. So you remove efficacy just based on a variety of decisions. I imagine cost is probably a big one oftentimes.
Yeah, but this is not to say you have to spend a lot, because it is definitely partly cost, but it's also partly just not understanding how these ingredients actually work, how they might help a person. In my experience, it's one or two ingredients in a formula that really drive the results in a formula in many, if not most cases. The reason why you don't just sell that one or two ingredients is, first of all, because it is better to have complementary ones. But second of all, because you sell a one ingredient product, it's probably not going to work very well in a ClickBank format, because people too easily are going to go, oh, I can just go and buy that, you know, more cheaply somewhere else. So you have to
you're just comparing like magnesium to what's on the shelf at Walmart or something, right?
Exactly. So you've got to have several ingredients, and it's good to have several ingredients, but people often forget. And then let's say the main thing that would help is magnesium. So, you know, let's say the issue is stress, for instance. Magnesium can help with that. So, you know, they might end up having a very small amount of magnesium in there, along with a load of other products that don't work as well for that. And then the product doesn't work. So I think that's part of it as well. It's just they don't actually understand it. So yeah, let me talk you through my process quickly. So the very first thing that I try and do is I do not look for ingredients. I look to understand the root cause of the actual health challenge, health issue. Performance issue, maybe in the case of sports stuff or whatever. That's not always easy to do. But what I tend to do is I'll look on YouTube and I'll look on Amazon. And I'll primarily do it for Amazon. And on Amazon, I'll look for the biggest, the most reviewed books in a specific area. So, for instance, I did thyroid recently. So when I did that, I got 6 books from Amazon from different doctors, and I read them all. And I looked for the commonality between them. Because what I noticed, for instance, with thyroid is half the doctors said you should have high doses of iodine, but half the doctor says you should not have high doses of iodine. That's dangerous. You should have low doses. So in that case, I'm not including iodine, right? Because that's a contentious issue. Half of them say it's a bad idea. Okay. So I look for the commonalities. What do they say what do they all agree is good, right? What is no one arguing about? And in the case of thyroid, it could be, you know, for instance, L-tyrosine. Everyone agrees that L-tyrosine is helpful. Okay, let's put that in there. So that's one of the things that I like to do. I also look on YouTube just to find, and I'll do that less for experts, though I might find some experts there, and more to see people's actual experiences. A lot of people are sharing, you know, reviews, like their, you know, their testimonial or whatever of what it was like. And so I want to look at that, but I also do it because I want to look at the comments. And I usually spend more time looking at the comments. I know some people do this on Reddit. That's fine. I just, for whatever reason, I'm not as keen on that. I think, you know, I want to know what the original thing is based on. So I like to have a YouTube video that I clearly understand, and then to see what everyone else thinks about it. And I look at the different things that are recommended and what people think about that, right? So someone says, you know, magnesium really great for anxiety in a video. Great. What do all the comments say? Does it help them? Does it not? What are they confused about? What do they need clarity about? You know, what are they asking? What are they saying work for them? And then the last thing is, when I do get some kind of idea about the ingredients, I'll then look for, again, highly rated products that contain those ingredients, and again, look for reviews, look for people sharing their experiences. And so all of that together gives me an idea, because yes, I do use scientific studies and scientific references as well, and scientific articles, but the scientific world is not super helpful for nutritional supplements, unfortunately. It's a whole thing, right? Because it's not patentable. There's very little money put into it. So the studies normally aren't great. Second of all, as a lot of us are discovering, the whole scientific world is actually very corrupt, and heavily influenced, and all the rest of it, without getting into, I won't go into any more of it than that, but
That's a different
and so
podcast.
therefore yeah but therefore they're not 100% trustworthy, even if they're praising your supplement, that ingredient. That's the key point, right? Like, I would not only base it on studies. I want to see a lot of real people who have no what's the word, no skin in the game, right? It doesn't benefit them to put reviews or to put comments underneath videos or to put reviews underneath books saying this changed my life. They do it anyway because it actually helped them. And so that's what I want to see. That's the kind of feedback that I want to see, as well as scientific studies.
No, it's
So
definitely great. Well, real fast, just 1%. I think it's a really great deviation there, because it's your scientific research. And what I love there that I don't think a lot of people do is, instead of picking the science you like, you're finding the correlation between all the sciences together. Super great distinction. And second, pairing it with, okay, great, everyone says this works. Do people recognize that it does? So I think that's huge, right? Because maybe it works, but it's something that you won't feel any different about it, and it'll take like 2 months before it gets going. Maybe that's not great for a supplement, because you need some immediacy, some urgency for someone to feel like they're doing now. Because I think an impulsive person, to ask them to wait 3 months for something to feel good is a really dangerous proposition. So, I think that's just really good in that tactic, that you're taking unified science, then a unified customer experience to get that immediate impact. I think it's really, really smart. Whether that's through Reddit or YouTube, make a great sale for YouTube there. But that's really, really awesome. So next, what do you do from there?
So then I base the doses. I do base those on studies. I look at a bit of anecdotal evidence as well, but if I see commonalities of most saying, "Oh, when I took over 500 milligrams, then it worked," I might pay attention to that. But I will usually base that on studies, right? So I've decided on my top 1 or 2 ingredients that are going to do most of the work. I've looked at all the other things that I can add, if I can add them cheaply and also without bulking out the formula too much. I remember I was working with someone recently to formulate something for them, and like they had very specific ideas what they wanted in there, and if we were to do it, I think there was a 16 capsule dose per day or something like that. And I was like, we're gonna have to tone these down a little bit. We're gonna have to reduce some of these.
Can you imagine the handful of like supplements that like bodybuilders take? Like, that's even taking it too far. Geez, 16.
Yeah, so that's going to be whatever it was going to be, 480 capsules a month, and it's going to cost them $50. And he's like, okay, we'll trim it down there. So look at making sure you got plenty of your 1 or 2 ingredients that are doing most of the work would be the most important thing, and then adding in sufficient quantities of your other things that help. I mean, explaining this, a simple example might be curcumin and bioperine, or pepper extract. So basically, whenever you have curcumin, one of the most researched anti-inflammatories, you always want to have this black pepper extract, because without it, the curcumin won't be absorbed, right? So that's like an example of that, and you have to be in that world a little bit to know that kind of stuff. And so, for instance, with the B vitamins, if I do a formula, one of the B vitamins is a major ingredient, then I'm going to make sure I have just small levels of all the other B vitamins, because they are complementary and they tend to work together. And also, if you don't include them, then the other ones can become depleted if you have a big dose of one. So it's that kind of stuff. You have to, have a bit of specialized knowledge in that. Or again, you read the books by the doctors that, will explain all that to you. And then there's also safety considerations, right? So it'll sometimes be the case that I won't include an ingredient which is very powerful for something. I just had this recently, like alpha lipoic acid. I saw that very high doses of alpha lipoic acid had loads of evidence and studies and reviews of people saying it really helped with this issue. But then I also know that alpha lipoic acid in high doses, if you have heavy metal toxicity, if you have like mercury, built up in your tissues and stuff like that, it will start to mobilize that and move it into your bloodstream, which will then make you feel very sick. So that's an example of maybe a lot of people wouldn't necessarily know that without doing the work on it, because if you just look up alpha lipoic acid side effects on WebMD, you're not necessarily going to find that. So that's the kind of thing that you'd find again by looking at reading books on Amazon or looking at YouTube videos maybe that are more specialized. So I'm like, okay, I know it will help 90% of people, but I know there's probably are at least 10% of people who have heavy metal toxicity, because that's commonly a cause of this problem in the first place. So I'm not going to include a large amount of that ingredient because I don't want to create that side effect. And there's numerous examples of that. Unfortunately, you have to take that on a case-by-case basis. There's almost nothing that doesn't disagree with someone, right? So long as you state clearly on the label that the ingredient is in there, then it's ultimately down to the consumer to be responsible for what they have. But it's a question of is it worth it? And then the other aspect is quality, right? So you're going to put in vitamin B12, for instance. That's a very ubiquitous ingredient. It's very cheap. But are you going to put in cyanocobalamin, which is actually the form of B12 that's bound to cyanide? Yes, cyanide, that over time is building up cyanide in your system and is not absorbed very well? Or are you going to go for a methylcobalamin, which is the best absorbed type of vitamin B12, but for some people it can cause issues because of its methylation action? Or are you going to go for adenocobalamin, which is well absorbed by the body as well and safe, but a little bit harder to get hold of, or it's a little bit more expensive? So these are the kind of considerations as well you want to look at with actually the quality of the ingredient. You don't want to assume that they're all the same. In fact, in some cases, like the bad form of the ingredient is worse than not having it. Like folic acid is an example of that, another B vitamin. Just folic acid, if you take it, will block your folate receptors, which means that your body can't then take in the real folate and will actually make a folate deficiency worse. So if you want to, give people a folic acid supplement, then you want to give them either calcium folinate, folinic acid, or L-methyl folate. So, and again, there are reasons why you do and don't want to include those ones. So it's worth
Essentially,
learning
it's a
about
bit of
this
a
stuff.
it's a bit of minefield, right? Because it's not just what you put in your body in the supplement. It can be how it correlates with others, can be simple, right? It's just a whole spectrum. It's like a mystery box of whatever you want. You could probably find the problem and solution all in the same place. So that being said, so it sounds like the big
Can I
thing is
include one
time
more
and
example?
research. Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, so zinc, right? Zinc supplement is really popular these days because of the recent viral infections. A lot of people are taking 50 milligrams a day of zinc. But did you know if you take 50 milligrams a day of zinc long term, you're going to deplete your reserves of copper. You're going to deplete your reserves of molybdenum. You're even going to potentially deplete iron, although that's more of an issue for women than men. So you can do, or vitamin D3. You take 5,000 IUs of vitamin D3 a day because you heard it's good for your immune system. Over time, you're going to get more and more calcium building up in your tissues because you're not having enough of the vitamin K2 with it. So you may say, how does this help to make more money? Perhaps it doesn't necessarily, because a lot of the time the customer will not know that you're having this negative effect on them without realizing it by using the cheap version of the ingredient or using too much of the wrong ingredient. Or, in the case of zinc, you'd want a little bit of copper with it, for instance, to keep it balanced. Well, it matters in the integrity space that we talked about. It matters on the does it actually work for the customer space? Because remember, they may not know that about cyanocobalamin or that high amounts of zinc will deplete their copper, but they may just feel after a couple of months of taking a product that I don't feel so good. I don't like it. Like, a lot of people are tuned into their body and that gut instinct. I don't really want that, So you might not think that it matters, but again, if you're trying to create a real business and get that long-term customer, and also if you want to be ethical, I would say, and that kind of doctor thing, first do no harm. If you want to, help people and minimize any harm that you might be doing, I think it's really important to understand this stuff, or to have someone do it for you who really understands it.
Yeah. On average, just from a time perspective, especially if you could tell me like what you think somebody doing this for the first time, how long it would take them to get there versus even for you as someone that's done this a lot for a long time. And for those that don't know Elwin, he definitely consumes a very above average amount of medical and nutritional information and science. So I think that's not an understatement by any means. But yeah, to give me an
Right.
idea of what you think it would take somebody trying the first time, and then in general, even how it takes for you to come up with a formulation.
It depends. I can do it in a few weeks if there's a time crunch, but I actually prefer to develop it over many months. I prefer to be reading, listening, thinking about it. The whole, creative process where your subconscious often spends a long time just processing something, and then suddenly it spits out the answer. And you can rush that by putting a deadline on it. But yeah, I'm thinking weeks to months. I'm not thinking a few hours. If you really want to do all this, like we talked about.
Yeah, and so that would be for even the average person. They might be more 6 months for them potentially. Then
Yeah, it depends. I mean, I try and do these kind of guides on my YouTube channel where I talk about everything you need to know for a specific issue. So if they found someone like me who can break it all down for them, and there's plenty of other people who do that as well, who I've enjoyed their work, where they go through and really explain things in detail. It depends. How long does it take you to read a book? I guess, I mean, for me, if it's a reasonable sized book, it might be a couple of days. But then again, this is my job, right? But so yeah, if it takes you a month to read a book, easily it could be 6 months. Yeah.
yeah, definitely not winning my pizza awards for the summer reading club. So no, that I just the idea there is I think it's not to say the process sounds. Well, this sounds really complicated, but it also sounds like a lot of work and a lot of understanding. So, that being said, for some
May
people,
I?
really, oh, yep, go ahead.
Can I comment on that? Because
Yeah,
I've been thinking a lot about this recently. I've just finished reading Elon Musk's Elon Musk biography, by Walter Isaacson, and a lot of that struck me as interesting. But the one that's relevant, I'll say, is that did you know that he puts no focus at all on advertising or marketing, and yet he works 16 to 20-hour days most days. Like, he pushes himself ridiculously hard. He often sleeps on the factory floor and stuff like that. Anyway, the thing that he's focused on all the time is product quality and how to make processes more efficient. Like, so I feel like and he's the richest man in the world, at least on paper, right? And arguably the most impressive business person, certainly in our time, maybe even ever, right? If he ends up being successful even more than he already is. And so that's really interesting because when I started in business, I learned that marketing is king, and it's all about marketing and it's all about sales. And actually, someone like that's perspective is, I'm going to focus religiously on making the product quality as good as possible, and also the process of manufacturing as efficient as possible. And because of that, the product's going to be so awesome that it's going to sell itself. And that's the very thing that we're taught in every marketing course is delusional, right? This idea of, if you just have a great product, then people will come. It's like, no, you have to tell them about it. And I think both things can be true. If you have a very ordinary product that's good, it's true that no one will just come, right? But if you have a product that is unusually exceptional, yes, even in the nutritional supplement space, it is possible that you will ultimately get a lot of sales through referrals and reviews and people just talking about how good your product is, which is what a lot of those businesses like Elon Musk's are, as I said, totally based on. I think Tesla, that's where the vast majority of his money has come from. He's never paid for advertising for, a Tesla car. And yet I think Tesla's worth more than every other car company put together. So, so I would say to people who think, this is a lot of work, or maybe it's going to be a lot of cost, the idea that all of your budget of a business should go to marketing, I think, is a fundamentally flawed idea that has been sold to you by marketing consultants who make money selling you marketing stuff. Not that I'm against any of those people. I wouldn't be where I am without them. They're wonderful. But what I'm saying is, I think that a certain percentage, a reasonable percentage of budget should actually be allocated to product quality, just like a reasonable amount of budget should be allocated to advertising and marketing. If you think about the pharmaceutical companies, one of the big criticisms of them is that they spend twice as much on marketing as they do on R&D. But if you look at our industry, most people are
So like
spending
90% marketing. Yeah.
and compared to R&D, often nothing, right? They'll go to a manufacturer who gives them an off-the-shelf product. So they're spending infinity percent more on advertising and marketing than they are product development. And then no wonder you don't get those good long-term LTVs, right? No wonder you don't get those repeat customers. So yes, it is an investment of time and or an investment of money, but I would say the idea that you can just have a product that costs almost nothing to develop or make and have a great long-term business out of that is possibly naive.
Yeah. Well, no, just to kind of build again, I think one of the things that's the work should always, is there's going to be work no matter what that goes tied to it. Work for somebody else, they have to pay for, work you have to do yourself, but it comes at a payoff of when the marketing meets a great product is when a great business is born. When an offer has great marketing with a bad product, that's just a great offer for a short period of time, right? Like that's the difference. If you want to chase another great offer every 6 to 9 months and hope that you could hit that with consistency, how does that change when maybe, you hit that offer, but it's got a great product behind it, and now that product continues to sell for years and years and years, and you have a winner for a decade, for a winner for 3/4 of a year. I think that's a really good way to think about it too. But totally agree that there should be more investment. With that being said, well, first, Thomas, anything you want to add or any other questions you have for Elwin?
I love that it all boils down to build something good, right? Whether it's
build good
your operations, whether it's product quality, whether it's your marketing, right? Like if it's content marketing, write good stuff, produce good content, right? Whatever it is, it's like if you do good stuff, it all gets a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So choose good. That's the message we really want. So for those that want to choose good for themselves, like I said, Elwin has content, walks through people. He's got YouTube channel. He's got his own podcast that goes really in depth. If you're like, hey, Huberman's great, I want even more. Elwin's got some content for you. So definitely recommend that. And then also, if you're just looking for some of the product formulation stuff from, entry level, maybe it's improving something you already have. Elwin has a lot of ways that he could really help out with that as well. Elwin, is there just some best ways you want to share with people on how they can contact you and reach out to you? Emails that we'll be sure to put in the show notes. And accurately, I know last time we ended up putting the wrong information in there, so we'll be sure to get the right stuff this time. But yeah, how can people get a hold of you?
Thank you. You can find me on, probably best to email. So Elwin at feelyounger.net would be the simplest way to get hold of me. And I guess you can share my YouTube channel. Yeah, if you reach out to me on LinkedIn, which apparently people have, they've locked me out and they refuse to let me back in. So don't.
LinkedIn enemy number one, Elwin Robinson.
What's your YouTube channel?
YouTube channel is YouTube whatever.com/Elwin Robinson, ELWIN Robinson. You should be able to find me with that. And Twitter, I'm on there at the real Elwin if you're a Twitter person.
For sure. Is it Twitter X?
Man, I've been following the fake Elwin this whole time. Okay.
Darn it. Well, awesome, man. I really, really appreciate the time. Again, guys, I think it's so key. And just to kind of circle this back, oftentimes acquisition is sexy. It's fun. It's really exciting to see high top line revenues. But if that high top line revenue is costing you everything, without having a good, high quality back end strategy with a high quality product, you're going to be chasing that type of revenue all the time. So I would encourage all of you to start up leveling the products. Let's get those custom formulations. Let's get the full back end with ecom store, the sequence, the authority, all that stuff, and enjoy sustainable businesses that last a little bit longer and make those big wins become something that's more of a lifetime than it is a couple of months. So I really, really appreciate your time, Elwin. Really, really appreciate this conversation. And I'm excited to see some people reach out and up level their entire supplement game so we could see some really cool stuff going in the future. And with that, until next time, please rate, review, subscribe, smash the like button, the bell, whatever the thing is that you're supposed to do on social. You're here, you're using it, probably more than I am. And Thomas, what do we tell the people on their way out?
Happy scaling.
All right, thanks, guys. Until next time. Bye.